So thank you everyone for joining today. The Making Technology Work for Marketing webinar is the second in our webinar series, and I'm ever so grateful to Robert Senior and Nicky Gash, and of course our own Bijesh for joining us today and sharing their thoughts and their experiences with us. I'm Justine Gonshaw. I'm Head of Marketing for Maglabs. I'm going to do a very general introduction, share some of my thoughts, and before we get started, I'm going to do some housekeeping because always need to know what you need to do. So we're going to speak for about 15-20 minutes in total, all of us. There'll be opportunities at the end to ask questions through the Q&A button that you can see, or once we finish speaking, you can also raise your hand and the mic will be open. You'll be asked to be able to join the debate and ask questions live. I hope you are alive, otherwise we'll be in trouble. And off we go. I'm going to get us started. I'm going to do the general introduction right now, Lorenzo. So I'm going to talk about the common problems associated with any technology project. It's from a marketing perspective. I'm a marketer. How to succeed, get the best results from a technology project. What the benefits of making technology work for marketing look like. And I'm going to talk in brief, and I mean very briefly, about a positive, negative experience before handing over to Robert Senior. I'm going to talk about, we'll share some of his thoughts, and he'll talk about his illustrious career when I hand over to him. And then after Nicky will share some of her experiences and how technology has made her life a bit easier, her working life a bit easier, before Bijesh talks about technology from a technologist's point of view, and how a projects run successfully. So without further ado, my next slide. So what are the common problems associated with technology projects? From my perspective, it's having no clear goals or changing the goalposts as you go through the project. Happens so often, and it's quite easy to get over and to avoid altogether. If you've got a clunky process, why try and mirror that existing clunky process onto a technology platform? Honestly, you're just asking for trouble, in my view. And I've seen that happen, and I've seen it done well too. Try to avoid decision making by committee. It never works well in any environment, but particularly when you're trying to get a technology project off the ground. And the other one is shifting deadlines. Not sticking to deadlines is always a disaster. If you agree some milestones and some deadlines, try and stick to them wherever possible. Sure, it will happen, but if you work together, you can generally keep to the sort of time that you initially agreed. Next slide. So, in my view, how to succeed. I think the most important thing is finding a company, a supplier who you know you can work with, who you know is going to do a great job for you, because there's some synergy there. So to do that, to spend some time before you start, understanding it is what you want to achieve. Look at what good looks like, who's achieved what you want to, and be realistic. If you're looking at sort of £100,000 worth of project and you've got a budget of 20,000, you are not going to achieve that. Look at the aspects that you can achieve and be practical and pragmatic. Speak to lots of people. Don't do anything until you've had lots of conversations and got a number of different quotes. Once you've got a supplier, agree clear goals and milestones and stick to them wherever possible. Be clear in decision making, who's doing the approvals, try not to have a committee, and communicate clearly to the business, within your project team, and to all stakeholders. Let them understand what you're trying to achieve, engage them in the project, make them excited about it, so it's live, everyone knows. And then work in joint teams with your supplier. If you can work in joint teams, it really does pay dividends. Next slide. In my view, a technology project gives you the chance to look at how you can do things better. As I said before, don't try and replicate, a clunky process. Is there a better way of doing things? Look at the future. Look at how you can save time and make efficiencies. And finally, Next slide. In my view, and what I've seen, introducing efficiencies is a real benefit of introducing efficiencies into the marketing processes can be a real benefit from a technology project. Tighten your business processes. Don't let them as they are. And if you do it well, you'll have more time to do other things. Suddenly the business recognize how much more marketing can do, how brilliant your marketers are, that they genuinely add value in areas they never anticipated or thought of before. I've seen that happen too. As well, but I've seen that happen. So it is worth looking at what a good project looks like, talking to people. And finally, my experiences. I'll give you one first because then I'll leave on a positive note. I was working for a leading consultancy in London as head of marketing, and I'd been there about 4 years. I'd created, or the marketing team had created, a bespoke CRM system. It was very simple, a little bit clunky, but it did everything we needed it to do. We were completely in control of every interaction. It was brilliant. It was linked to a mailing service. It was linked to our events. It worked for us, and everyone in the business had access to it, but they couldn't make changes within the system or make deletions. About 2 years before I left the business, the accounting side of the business decided that they didn't have a solution, technology solution that worked for them. So they looked at an SAP, a customized SAP solution. They worked on it for about 6 months, and I think about 5 weeks before go live, head of accounting rang me and said, "Oh, by the way, Justine, we're going to migrate all the CRM data. In fact, you're going to close your CRM system down, and it's all going to sit on the one app. And by the way, your account exec will be in touch next week, and you can talk about how that's going to work." 2 hours after a conversation with the rep, it was clear that marketing was an afterthought. We hadn't been considered, and it just wasn't going to work. I left about 2 years after that, and there were 3 phases we decided on in order to get the system working properly for marketing. And in those 2 years, we ran 2 systems in parallel, so we made the processes. And even as today, they've still not got a system that's fit for purpose, a CRM system. So that's a really good example of a very poor afterthought of a technology solution. It worked for one part of the business, and we just weren't considered. To turn that around, for a completely different finance house, where again I was head of marketing, the technology side of the business worked with the global marketing team, and we built a portal, client and supplier portal, that streamlined all workflows. It was a 6-month project. We worked in joint teams. There's great communication between all stakeholders, and it made such a difference to the business. It gave us more time to do things. Interaction with clients were more efficient. Suppliers got their approvals through more quickly, and that portal actually won an award. So 2 examples from my perspective. I can give you 100 more, some good, some bad. And with that, I'm going to pass on to Robert, who's going to talk about some of his experiences and introduce himself a little bit. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you very much, Justine. Hello, everyone. This is a bit odd, isn't it? I can't see any of you. I'm assuming you're out there. So I am I'm currently a founding partner of a venture company called Red Rice, and we back early stage businesses, so startups, disruptors. And the theme, maybe the red thread of my little few minutes, is going to be that of disruption and the role that technology can or can't play in that. But prior to that, I did have a 30-year career in advertising, including Creative Boutique, which was quite well known courtesy of a drumming gorilla for Cadbury at the time. Sold that to the Publicis Group, then worked at Saatchi and Saatchi, first as the UK CEO, then EMEA, then most latterly worldwide CEO, and then stepped out. And I stepped out because I really was at my best when I was growing things and creating things, not when I was block tackling and defending. But through that process, I suppose I was lucky enough to be part of the sort of the program, if you like, of bringing in fresh new capabilities as part of the agency's digital transformation, and really to help our clients and as part of theirs. So that's my background. So net, colouring in department, not algorithm or code writer. I guess my start point would be, well, first of all, the title is Making Technology Work for Marketing. And my first observation is sometimes it feels that it's the other way around, that marketing is desperately trying to work with technology. You know, I suppose my observation is that while holding companies were acquiring the tech capabilities, acquiring them as I played my part in that, you know, that there's been like a tech takeover in marketing. 10 years ago, if Justine or anyone had said, we won an award for a portal that streamlined workforce, it's a bewildering statement. They were the way operating systems in marketing. The entire vernacular, the entire sort of center of gravity has shifted, and rightly so, as the technologies has afforded these efficiencies and capabilities. I guess my prejudice, and by the way, it's not just all when I say all the holding companies, I would include Rittel Holdings in that, who of course own Maglabs. So it literally is all. I guess my prejudice would be, and it's not a new thought, I'm not pretending it to be so, but I'm going to try and hold this line of the arc of this narrative, which is simply this, that technology is an absolutely critical ingredient, but sometimes is mistaken as being the whole recipe in marketing. So if I can expand on that, I guess looking at it from the ventures company, and I mentioned we look for disruptors and challengers in a post-COVID world, in a post-Brexit world, you know, legacy companies are really open to being challenged. And a lot of that's to do with the accessibility, both in price and usage of technologies for social lives, for transactions, with running businesses, as we are here now. And that's, you know, it's been a fantastic opportunity, I think, for any startup. You've got this wonderful sandwich being created with legacy brands sort of caught right in the middle. On the top end, you've got the titans, the tech titans, the usual suspects, including Alibaba, creating amazing ecosystems that set the standards for consumer behavior. It just sets new standards. And at the other end, you've got another force called disruptors, who are resetting what's possible in any given category, and then forms that as the expectation that then is applied to every business and every brand. What do you mean I can't have what I want to eat exactly now brought to my house, or a car just like that to take me to any postcode? It just, stuff gets disrupted, and legacy brands, unfortunately, are getting caught in the middle. So, you know, when we look at that dynamic, any startup, the notion of an e-commerce strategy and e-marketing and anything is an absolute, it's a deal breaker not to be ideally best in class, or at least aspiring to be best in class. Having the capability, that is just not good enough anymore. So an example would be in this, I mean, you guys know there's thousands of them. In fact, there's loads of you on the call right now who probably are doing just that. But an example of a disruptor, a tech-based disruption in marketing, would be Eagle Eye Solutions, which is a SaaS business. You may have heard of it. It's a platform that allows businesses to create intelligent, real-time connections and build digital promotions and loyalty services. Put that into English, what that really means is, well, people used to cut out coupons in the newspaper, now it comes via an app. Or the Tesco Club Card was a piece of something you held, is now lives in the cloud. Interestingly, its CEO is Tim Mason, who's the ex-CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Tesco. One of its lead investors and who's a board member is Satori Leahy, ex-CEO of Tesco. So this is very much it's an interesting SaaS business. And it's interesting to me that it goes into an old school world of the sort of the physical retail space, and even then forces it to play and take the digital world and the technology world seriously. So then my health warning would be, just because I can doesn't make it good. Just because I have the technology to do ABC, it's only going to be good if it's really good, by which I mean the principles of marketing. If it enhances and helps drive the principles of marketing, then it's helpful. But if it tries to rewrite the principles of marketing, then I start questioning some of it. So for example, a loyalty program, a promotional dynamic device to create loyalty, that's about consumer connections, giving them something they want and that they genuinely see adds value to their lives, then they'll use it, then they'll embrace it. So I'm just going to close with there's a academic who has spent his entire career learning from the species of ants and extrapolating that onto people. And he talks a lot about technology. There is I'm going to come back to point on this. His name is E.O. Wilson. And what he does is he looks at ants, because ants have been around for 100 million years. We've been around for 10,000. So they've kind of got evolution down. You know, they've kind of cracked it in a way that we haven't yet. And there's over 12,000 species of ants. Some are massive, some are tiny, depending on where they live around the world. The one thing is absolutely identical, though, in every single species, is their dwelling, their houses. They're not just similar, they are absolutely identical. And the reason this is relevant is he concludes this, and this is his quote. He says, "The problem facing humanity is that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology." And what he means by that is that the medieval institutions are being challenged massively by the godlike technology. There's all the preconceptions, all the wisdoms, or many of them are being challenged. It doesn't have to be like that. There's another way. However, our emotional register, the thing that makes us laugh and cry and curious and anger and love and all these other things, our emotional register is like the ants' houses. That hasn't changed since the day we stood up straight on the plains of the savannah some 10,000 years ago. And the notion that technology and algorithm code writing could change our emotional register is just fanciful. We will always be that species who learns through stories, who learns through, who are sentient. And so therefore the role of technology in marketing should always be to enhance that experience and that storytelling, not to replace it. Because at the end of the day, marketing is in the business of action, getting a change in behavior largely. And as we know, reason leads to conclusions, but emotion leads to action. And those are my thoughts.
Lovely, thank you. Very thought-provoking. Nicky, I'll introduce you. I failed to introduce Robert properly, so I'll try and introduce Nicky at least. Nicky Gash, welcome. She's SVP of Creative Services at Universal Pictures. If you'd like to speak for a few minutes, Nicky.
Yes, thank you, Justine. So, a little background from me. My career started in a kind of secretarial capacity at EMI Records straight from school, which I moved quickly into A&R, where I worked for 10 years, which is basically the recording and mastering of material and working with new bands. From there, I moved to Sega, where I started my first kind of international marketing role, which was the marketing services department, from where I went to decided to go supply side and started working for a cardboard display manufacturer that at the time was, back in the 90s, it was all about cardboard, fanciful and fantastic cardboard displays in retailers to show off your video. And from there, I then got headhunted to move to Universal in the home entertainment team, where I started in 2001, and from there moved into the theatrical marketing team when we set up an international theatrical business in 2006. Prior to that, Universal's marketing internationally been handled by a joint venture called UIP, which some of you may not know about. So I started when I was at home, and I'm kind of starting from a different background to Robert. Marketing services post-production, it's a very different angle to the digital disruption that Robert was talking about. It's a functional piece. It's essentially moving with the times, and the big part of it was moving from physical to digital servicing of materials, and that's kind of where my focus is on the digital systems that I work with. I kind of echo what Justine said regarding the most important part of it is to make sure you're building the systems fit for purpose, and the way you do that is making sure that the architecture is being discussed and agreed with the right people. To not include the people that are actually going to need to use it is a massive mistake. I mean, I agree, there is, I think you need to look at processes and always question when you're moving something from digital to physical to digital. Are we doing the best we can, to your point, not just to copy the physical process, but to try and improve upon it as you go along. It's important, and that's also why I feel it's really important that the people that are working on building the system are the ones that are actually going to use it, as opposed to without kind of being too kind of dismissive, an IT team who they have the technology understanding, but they don't actually understand the way the system has to work. And I've seen that happen, and it can be disastrous, as Justine also found out to have cost. So that was kind of one of the first things that I did when I moved to Universal Theatrical, was we needed an asset management system to move materials. I mean, in the old days, and Robert was talking about the colouring, it was similar things. You know, we moved from 4-colour film separations and chromelin, which used to ship around the world to people, to a SiteQuest disc, and eventually the most the most kind of cutting edge we got was sending material style guides around on burning them onto CDs and couriering them. Well, you can imagine how long that takes. So, you know, it was a no-brainer once the technology caught up, that you would use as much as you could to physically or digitally deliver. And then the problem became people's, bandwidth, and that still actually can be a slight problem these days. Even with AWS, some territories, some countries have their bandwidth is to struggle for large files. So there's always something to be looking at, something to be improved upon. And the other thing that I've found is, you know, when you're building a system, something you build in 2006 is not actually going to potentially what you need in 2020. It's very difficult in our experience to totally future-proof what you do, because technology moves. And I've got kind of an anecdotal story on that, which you might find interesting, in that when we originally built the system for Universal Marketing Services, we didn't send no AV was serviced through the site because some files were too big. The technology wasn't there. In those days, if you wanted to move a large file, you know, use something called SohoNet, or or used to smart jog stuff. There was these various ways of moving material, which was quite clunky. It involved a third party. You had to get the tape to the third party. The third party then had to ingest it and it was unwieldy, and it was also extremely expensive, because basically it was satelliting material from one place to the other. So the goal was, eventually the goal would be that we would use our system to be able to move all our AV files for trailers, TV spots, not features, but just marketing materials. And we worked with developers for at least 2 years trying to work out how the hell we were going to manage this. And actually, when we got to a point where we thought we could, technology had moved on, and actually we didn't need anything clever to do it. You just uploaded the files, because the systems could take the size of the file, the territories could take the downloads. There was no need to be compressing and putting in different containers of lots of letters and numbers that I really don't understand. And so that kind of, for us, that was an example where we could have spent a lot of money developing something that actually became obsolete the minute we pressed the button on it. And that is a challenge with the sort of systems I work with, because it's always something you have to question. You don't know, to Robert's point, what's coming down the track, what's the next big thing that's going to make it even easier for you to do X, Y, or Z. Obviously, in working as we are at the moment remotely, no business can work without some sort of digital asset management system to move its materials around. We would be strangled. So from that point, working remotely doesn't really have, and also with the partner where you can get the back end functionality working, it would have been impossible to try and do business in the COVID world without this asset management system. I kind of think that's probably about all I've got to say, really. Hopefully that's been useful.
Yes, thanks, Nicky. Thanks very much. Last but not least, we're going to get Bijesh Tank's thoughts. He's our head of development at Maglabs. Joined us about 9 months ago. Is that right, Bijesh?
Yeah, it's been nearly 1 year now.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's gone quickly.
Cool, thank you, Justine. What I'm going to be talking about today is a little bit more on the other side of the fence. So as a technology team, what are the kind of the challenges that we experience trying to enable, things for marketing, technology for marketing. So this talking about from some of my experience that I've gone through. So let me just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not at the moment.
No? 1 second. So this is more about how, as technology teams, how you can enable your technology teams to be more agile and more focused in terms of delivery. And, you know, this is just an all-round kind of my perspective and my experience. So just a little bit about me. So I'm a technical leader. I'm passionate about all things technology. In my previous life as well, I worked for a startup company, a successful startup company in the property technology space. So starting out at that startup, you know, we found a lot of challenges, a lot of the stuff that we kind of had to go through and processes and that we had to bring in place. So when I'm talking about teams, we kind of look at the people first. So what makes a successful team? So to me, to be successful, teams are given trust and empowerment, given enough information and context to work on priorities with the goal of delivering vision. Now, that's all great, but how do we do that? So in order to do that, we need to start thinking about how can we make strong teams to be able to deliver on those kind of visions. So we're looking at ideas of making teams cross-functional. So by that I mean, so all the teams have the correct competencies required to transform an idea and to deliver. Co-location, we're talking about where the teams are within the same space, so within the same area. Obviously within times of COVID, that's a little bit more of a struggle and might not really help with that situation, but we have tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams and other online tools that we can utilize to help mitigate those kind of situations. The teams have to be committed 100%, so there has to be no other competing priorities or other commitments from outside and any outside interference. The teams need to be stable, so they need to become strong and high performing. They need to get to know each other and get to know each other's weaknesses and strengths as well at the same time. They need to be autonomous, so they need to decide together how to work with each other, how to solve problems, and which order the work is done. They need to figure out the best strategy as well in terms of how to reach that goal. And the biggest thing in all of this is taking ownership. So when I say ownership, it's about how they shape their own process, and everyone's collectively responsible for the delivery and the quality of the output. So with all of that in mind, the teams also need to be accountable. So accountability is a key thing for strong agile teams. So they need to agree like a code of conduct. So what behaviors do you expect from each other inside the team? You need to establish your core team members. So and team roles coincides with that. So everyone has a role within that team. So that could be a developer, it could be a QA, it could be a designer. And they need to be able to establish their own working processes and how they want to manage their releases. So how do we enable that? We enable our teams to be able to fail fast. Now, this can be seen as a negative thing to do, but you need to allow your teams to fail in order to get better. So how do we know? We learn best from learning from our mistakes. So how do we enable that? So we can do things like rapid experimentation, rapid prototyping, obviously learning from those failures. So what went well, what are we going to do better for the next time? And during that process, what are we going to improve for the next time? And it's all about testing and incrementing. So through each of these cycles of failures and successes, we're gonna learn to test those and increment those and for better delivery process. During that process, we as a team, you expose each other's strengths and weaknesses, which is a good thing, because even when you know your weaknesses, you know your weaknesses for the rest of the team as well, and as well as the strengths. And it establishes trust within the team. So as a leader, how do you enable a successful team? So they need to have the right tools for the job. It goes without saying, they need to have all the online tools, they need to have equipment, even basic stuff like that. They need to be in the right environment. So the environment needs to allow them to be able to be more creative, to be able to collaborate with each other. Providing the team with appropriate training. So that could be for the team, that could be for individuals. We're looking at not just training for technical skills, this could be more softer kind of skills on the outside. They need to be protected. So again, goes back to any outside interference. You need to protect your teams from outside interference. They need to be motivated. It's always a key thing. And not to be afraid to seek help from others. So as a leader, you need to be humble in that sense, where you're not going to need that. You won't know everything. You need to also lean on other people. Involving stakeholders and providing feedback, and also the management of third-party suppliers. So feedback is always a key thing. So if we want to enable our teams to be connected and to deliver value, how do we do that? Part of this process is keeping teams in the loop. So keeping them connected to our customers and users, and understand if their needs are being met, and understanding their pain points. So questions are we delivering high quality software? Do all the tests work? And if not, what kind of changes do we have to make? Are we progressing fast enough? If not, why not? Do we need to then look at reprioritizing or reducing any kind of scope? And are the users' problems being solved? So are we meeting their demands? Are we meeting their value? And that leads on to, are we delivering on the desired impact? If we're answering all these questions, then we need to think about, if there's no's to those, then we need to think about how we can rethink the process, what improvements we need to make, how do we reprioritize our work. So that's just some of my experience I've had leading teams. So when I was, just to give an example, when I was working at a previous startup, we were a very small team. We weren't really delivering. It took a long time to get release cycles out. So we had to start implementing better processes in place to deliver to our customers. And so we had to make a lot of kind of small iterative steps, baby steps. A lot of this came down to speaking to our clients as well, and enabling our teams to be able to speak to our clients directly, finding out what they're trying to get to, what is their vision, what are their goals. And throughout that whole iterative process, we were able to go from a team which were slowly delivering to a team which were able to rapidly deliver every couple of weeks. So again, when we were doing that, we were getting instant feedback from our clients. Is what we've delivered, is that working correctly? If not, let's go back, let's revisit the playbook and make certain improvements. So that was over a course of a couple of years trying to implement these processes as an ever-changing process in Agile delivery. So that's it from me.
Lovely, thanks, Bijesh. Any questions from the audience? Can anyone share how technology has made things better and or worse for them within marketing? Did you hear that? Want to go,
Yeah.
Robert?
Yes, I did hear that. I'm just having a little think. I think of an example of when technology is making things better or worse. Well, it's made it better. Take Instagram. Visual storytelling in a world that's become increasingly iconographical is incredibly rich, I think, and it's brought I think the upside is the barriers to entry have come down. That's the thing. You can talk to an awful lot of people relatively cheaply if you have something interesting to say, or you say it in an interesting way. And that surely has got, in the world of storytelling, that's got to be a good thing. That's from a qualitative standpoint. Nicky, have you got an example? You're on mute. Oh, yeah.
I kind of think I probably covered that off in what I spoke about originally. In that, as I say, from a marketing services perspective, there's absolutely no point having a system unless it's going to be better. I mean, I guess you can roll right across anything you do, but when you're actually dealing with something that's actually doing your job to get something from A to B, you need to make sure that it works properly. I can't think of an example where anything's been worse. I mean, I suppose, perhaps the example I used of, trying to, making sure you're future-proofing stuff and you're not spending money and effort creating something you don't need. And we kind of did that, part of that with this module within the system we use, where we'd involved the promotional team and tried to get a system where they would use it to order their promotional merchandise. And it kind of didn't work. It wasn't really thought through properly, and actually it ended up never being used. And so that was money spent on a system that actually people have continued to do it via spreadsheet or whatever way they did it. That's probably the only example I can think of.
Can I add to my little thing, Justine, if I may? I was just thinking about the world of creativity and this notion of dynamic creativity that can be, you know, using machine learning or geofencing to, you know, literally create content in real time, depending on the context of the viewer, where they are, and all this stuff, which sounds so utterly brilliant, and often is. How-to videos are a good example where it's really, really good. The use of those, and they can be made incredibly quickly. But equally, when I've heard so many agencies and people in production companies talk about dynamic creativity, the thing I look at the output, and yes, they've caught the right weather conditions about whatever the offer was for sunroof promotion for a car and it's raining, whatever it might have been that delivered the nuance and the detail of the piece of creativity, produced and distributed in real time, is definitely dynamic, but it so often isn't creative. And I think it's a very, you know, be careful what you wish for, because if you're going to produce something rubbish, then people will kind of remember that. So just because you can doesn't make it good. So I think that's an example where it hasn't helped.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the other danger with with marketing is looking at some of the when people often hold certain companies up as leading lights within marketing, being you know, that marketing centric. I mean, look at Branson. Most brand companies are usually held up as sort of good marketing institutions, or being focused on marketing, but then companies try and copy and replicate what you know, these companies spend a fortune on, and it just doesn't work for them. They end up with something they A, don't know how to use, and B, can't replicate properly. I think you need to be really careful, and it goes back to the thinking about what to achieve, and don't copy, but try and be creative. It's easy to see something brilliant and say, I want that, but actually, is it right for your business? Can we have another question? Is there any technology you don't currently have or isn't yet available that you think your company would benefit from? Okay. Not sure who that's.
Take that one to start with. Well, actually, sometimes it's a case of you don't know what you don't know, and it's not until you kind of stumble across something that you think, well, actually, that would be great if I could do that. I wonder if there's something that help. In my experience, you know, especially latterly in the last few years, there isn't very much that, you know, if you come up with a problem to the developers, there's always a solution. It may not be the most cost effective, but there's always something. I mean, we're looking at our system as a way if we can start self-trafficking digital content to the YouTubes and Facebooks of this world. When we're doing a trailer break, you know, currently there is an upload downloads type process for getting those files into all the local digital marketplaces for the trailer breaks, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, or whatever. So then there's kind of an opportunity there, something we're looking at. I'm sure there's a piece of technology that can help us do it. We actually haven't started and haven't asked yet. So I think the answer to that really is I've never come across a problem that can't be solved, but whether it's actually solved in the most effective and cost-effective way is another question.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to when quantum computing becomes sort of widespread available, just from the sheer speed of predictive learning, just hundreds of millions of variables condensed in a fraction of a second to give you a sense of what, to start to being able to plot likely outcomes and risk analysis. I think that's going to be very cool, actually. Yeah. I think a lot of the work that's doing in the film industry around facial recognition and being able to, through machine learning, assess people's, if they're liking or not liking stimulus is at the moment a bit dangerous, because I think at the moment it's a little bit of a blunt instrument, but I think that will become really interesting. Because sometimes to get the best, you need a good cry in a film to really enjoy the happy ending. And if you stopped everything every time someone started crying or looked upset, you'd never get to the good bit. So, Shakespeare wouldn't have had a career if he wasn't allowed to have some down moments. So you've got to be a bit careful, but I think it's kind of interesting how our body language can tell so much about what's going subconsciously upstairs.
I think from my perspective, I think I'm going to ask Bijesh a question, but from a marketer's perspective, you go to a supplier and you sometimes ask what seems really really easily achievable, but actually it's, as Nicky said, it's not the most cost effective, and it's not as easy to achieve as we think. What would be your top tips, your 3 top tips, Bijesh, in terms of someone comes to you, what would you say? They're asking you, they're asking for something that's not really achievable in the cost-effective way. How would you manage that? What would top tips be for marketers?
Good question. So in terms of like implementing technology or some kind of solution, so what I would kind of say is, first of all, know what you want. That's going to be the key thing. So often, sometimes as technology companies, we have to sit down a lot with the clients right at the beginning just to get to the nitty gritty of some of that finer detail before we can actually go into, being able to deliver something. So it's, first of all, knowing what you want. Second thing, communication, keeping lines of communication open on all sides. That's always going to be one of the key things. Third one, finding the right tools for the job. So what I mean by that is you can either go down for something like a bespoke route. There's always off-the-shelf products as well. Not one solution, not all solutions will fit one requirement. You have to look at, what is going to be best fit for the business. Sometimes you might be able to get something off the shelf, which you can maybe customize. And help develop that around business processes, or we go down a more of a bespoke route, and you have something which is more embedded to your business as well. So, looking around for different technology solutions and best fit.
Okay, great. And we've got another question. This is a challenging one. I'm not sure who we can all have a go, but how are you actively removing bias in marketing processes and systems, specifically in light of the recent incidents highlighting the embedded racism in our societies and media? You want to take that one, Robert? It's a challenging one. I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, I've got errant dogs in the background. Can you read the sentence out again, the question out again?
Yes, give me 2 seconds. I'll try. How are you actively removing bias from marketing processes and systems, specifically in light of the recent incidents highlighting the embedded racism in our societies and media?
Shall I start, Nicky? Well, first of all, I don't have a marketing system, so I can't really give that. I can't answer that directly. But what I can say is that what we're doing, everything I'm involved in at the moment, is making sure that what we do is the important bit, not what we say. And putting a black box on your website to show solidarity is tantamount to greenwash, I think. So I honestly think it's a very dangerous topic because it's so heightened and so sort of it's sharp in everyone's consciousness. But I think it's time for the actual. There's been words have happened. It's time for action. It's absolutely time to deliver against your beliefs. And if you don't start telling me what you believe, because you obviously don't. Because if look at it this way, I can't think of a company that didn't go out and show their support of, we really believe in this, we believe in that. If that were the case, how come we got a problem in the first place? If everyone was of that mind, how come the problem is as sort of systemic and deep rooted as it is? It's just it's I don't know. It's the law of unintended consequences. Everyone's doing it for a good, noble because of moral compass reasons. But the reality is not enough is happening. And so I suspect that's at the heart of the question. What are you doing in your processes? I think it starts with, just now we heard about teams and the importance of teams and letting people make mistakes and whatnot. I think one of the things is make sure your team is a true representation of the people you're serving, with equal voice. I think that's a pretty good start.
Yeah, I think that.
I would echo everything that Robert said. I don't think it was put so eloquently. I don't think I can add to it really. Again, system is, it's not the system is going into it. Obviously, from our perspective, the system I deal with is a purely functional system for moving something from A to B. So I don't know if there's anything within that that could relate to it. But as I say, it's the whole ethos around the whole business rather than the process, I would say. Yeah,
I mean, Maglabs are very diverse. We're culturally diverse, and I don't think we. I think we do act well and we behave well. But I think, you know, generally, systemically, if you look at all inclusion leaders that I've worked with over the years in huge corporates, and that's part of the problem. They're struggling as inclusion leaders to make change, you know, in a little isolated group. You know, they're talking the talk, they're trying to get things to happen, but they're a tiny group trying to influence a massive corporate. And in some businesses, it's just a role, and it's there just to tick the box. And I think that's part of the problem. So I think, you know, some of the big corporates need to stop ticking the boxes and actually, as Robert said, you know, act. I think that's, I don't know if you've got anything.
I've got something, yeah, so it's quite interesting because I've been reading quite a bit about this as well, and how it's kind of changing the face of technology as well as a whole. So there are companies like Microsoft and, you know, some of the big boys who are now started to look at even just down at the, you know, bare levels of like terminologies for certain things. So we're looking at things like, you know, terms that we used to like white lists and black lists, you know, seen as a positive and a negative thing, you know, that needs to change. So the terminology is around technology. So even going as far as saying, you know, we need to change it to something like something simple as allowed and denied, same thing, you know. So there's little technology changes, terminologies, I think will start changing over the next year or so, and you'll see a lot more developers, more technical people starting to embrace that as well, getting away from some of that negativity that might be in the press at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to change unconscious bias. It takes years and years and movements like that, you know, keep happening because things happen, but it's not something we're going to get over quickly. No, you know, we can, those simple things, we need to change the way, we need to change things from in school, from the very beginning. Anyway, that's a difficult topic. I'm not sure which one we're going to solve. I've got another question. My background is not in marketing, but I do understand the need to embed this in my business. Those of us in startups, how would you suggest we structure what we mean by success in these early years?
Crikey. Well, I think it's really important. Setting up a business, it's really exciting, and it's a form of self-expression almost. It's something that's come from deep within, and you have a vision, and it's very personal, because if you and a few business partners, it's yours, and it becomes your belief, and it's your contract to the world. So it has got a lot of psychology baked into it. And I think and then when people stretch forward and try and project and target and plan the future, they tend to start thinking about, oh, I wonder when our exit could be, or who might buy us, or are we going to IPO, or what does success look like? And that's a long range success, you know, usually steeped in fame and glory and yachts and I don't know what else. The reality is, starting a business, founding any business, in my opinion at least, in experience, and certainly now in this, you know, great uncertainties we're dealing with, is never going to be, you can never really project how it's going to go. It's going to be an unfolding narrative as we go a bit here and then over here, and then this will stop. And, you know, it's the General Eisenhower quote, plans are useless, planning is everything, which the point being, you've got to always be in the process of planning, but don't have a plan and just stick religiously to it, because something will change. Something, you know, when it changes, you have to change. So my sense is, I had a brilliant speech years and years ago about planning, and he said that the person speaking said a lot of people have like a 3-year plan, and he said that's just the most pointless thing because too much changes in 3 years. He said have a 3-month plan, like a 100-day plan, and then have a 300-year plan. What's your legacy going to be in 300 years time? What are they going to say about you? And if you just stare at those 2 poles, because 3 months is enough time to really get on with stuff. You can do a lot in 3 months, but it's also a short enough time to make it incredibly practical and operate in the reality of the now. So you don't get fanciful. You know, a 3-year plan can say things like, be brand leader. You know, well, okay, brilliant. That's not a plan, that's just hope. And so I think my advice would be to imagine you're climbing, I don't know, another metaphor, but climbing Everest. Don't stare at the peak, stare at base camp. Just stare at the next bit. Focus all your energy on that. And then when you get there, you know, a cup of tea or a pint or something, and then work out what the next stage is. Do it in steps.
Yeah, I agree. With my experience in startups, it's be flexible, think on your feet, and be prepared for the next challenge, because there are usually quite a few challenges you need to overcome, and I look at them as positive challenges, because it's all making you better.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bijesh, apologies.
Oh no, sorry, I thought you finished.
No, you go.
So no, I mean, from my experience is how we used to measure success is it basically just came down to, are we meeting the demands of our customers? Are we actually fixing their problems? Are we delivering value? And that's how we measured our success. And we always got feedback continually from our customers and our clients to help us deliver our roadmap. So we had a roadmap, you know, okay, as a business, that's what we did. But then that would continually change based on, you know, that could be different demands, you know, or there could be a different challenge that we need to overcome. This is all within so I'm talking more about the property game, because that's a big business that is going into the digital era right now as well. So there's many different challenges. So that's how we, in the early years, that's how we defined our success. Is obviously, okay, number one is sales. Are we delivering on the commercial? Also, that valuable feedback that we get from our customers.
Lovely, thank you. Just one final question. We'll thank you for the comment that was posted. Just one final question. Is it always good to look at latest technologies to achieve our marketing goals, or is it better to look first at simple, unknown, possibly analog solutions?
So I can probably start off with that one. Yes. I think it's just going back to what I said earlier. There's no different horses, different courses, basically. So it's what is fit for your business. If you want to start looking at something, you want to trial something, you want to get to something like an MVP stage, you might look at something which is off the shelf, and does it work for your business? So just look at, it's knowing what your actual goals are, what are you trying to achieve, and is that meeting your demands as a business? If you need something more, then this is where you need to start thinking about what is it that you need. And so this goes back to defining exactly what you need as a business before you can start exploring other avenues, because it's down to money at the end of the day. It depends on your budgets. That's a really big key thing, and technology can change that direction in terms of how your budget is driven as well.
Yeah, I would say don't just look at the latest, most sexy technology, because it's not always the answer. But any final thoughts, Robert or Nicky?
I would just say my mantra is, and as you probably gathered, it's not my bag. But when I'm faced with that question, a good way of answering it is imagining it's Tuesday in November, it's dark and it's raining. How is it helping me? You know, is it how practical? It's the same answer actually. Is it really practical? Is it absolute solving something practical? Yes or no? If it isn't, I wouldn't bother.
Any last thoughts, Nicky?
I say that, yes, it kind of goes back to what I said before. You know, you need to look at the best way of doing something and not be blinkered about whether, you know, that is the sexiest piece of kit to you do it. You know, there's more than one way to achieve. I think you just have to look at the best way, and for me, that wouldn't matter whether digital, it's what makes the most sense.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Robert, to Nicky, and to Bijesh. It's been fantastic. I hope all the everyone who joined enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you did want to continue to ask questions, then by all means do send emails, or you can post on the webinar, and we'll send them out to Robert and Nicky. And you can rewatch the webinar if it's that exciting. It will be posted on our LinkedIn from tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.